Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
After he had washed the feet of the disciples, Jesus said to them, I tell you most solemnly, no servant is greater than his master, no messenger is greater than the man who sent him. Now that you know this, happiness will be yours if you behave accordingly. I am not speaking about all of you. I know the ones I have chosen. But what Scripture says must be fulfilled. Someone who shares my table rebels against me. I tell you this now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you may believe that I am he. I tell you most solemnly, whoever welcomes the one I send welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So we are reading from John chapter 13. And of course we know it's the discourse of Jesus washing the feet of the disciples, of his 12 apostles. And it starts by saying that no servant is greater than the master. And no messenger is greater than he who sent him. And he says, then continuing that, now that you know this, happiness will be yours. Know what? Would be the question. Know what? Now that you know this, know what? And it is the example that Jesus had laid behind for them in the previous verses. Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. And it is a strange act because a master would sit at the table and expect the servants to wash his feet. And even when Jesus begins to wash the feet of the disciples, Peter is very strong to say, no, you cannot do this because this is not normal. This is not the usual thing we should do. Now, this theme is very important because it flows through all of Scriptures, the humility of Jesus. And we read already about a good shepherd who does not only care for the sheep, but also lays down his life for the sheep. No shepherd will do that. A shepherd will care for the sheep, but he will not go as far as sacrificing his life for the sheep. Now, if you go, St. Paul already talks about this when in the famous hymn in Philippians chapter 2, where he says that though he was in the form of God, he did not count equality with God something to be grasped, but he emptied himself and took the form of a human. He took the form of a slave and became one like us in everything. And not only that, he died. Okay? He died a shameful death so that he carries everybody with him at his resurrection. So his resurrection covers everything because he went to the lowest part of humanity. He went to the lowest part that any human being could be in so that he could include all of us in his resurrection. And Jesus says, therefore, no servant is greater than his master. And this is what we must carry with us all the time. That we must remember that we have the one who sent us. Now, in the world we find a lot of people who are not pointing to the message, to the person who sends them, but they are pointing to themselves. Recently, I was watching a video about some pastors now and prophets who have come up, many in Africa, really, mainly in Africa, who are proclaiming themselves as Lord, who get all the attention to themselves. They have to sit on people even as they preach. They have to let people to kiss their feet as they preach. And strange things happening. And the attention is no longer about Jesus, who died for us, who suffered, who was crucified, who rose that we may have life. The attention is more about ourselves, about the things that we are doing, about feeding our ego. And this is exactly the same thing that happens to Judas. He says, you would find happiness when you know this, that there is somebody greater than us, there is somebody who has sent us. And therefore, if we know that we are not the message, but only messengers, then we have who to hold on to, the person who sent us. If we know that we are just servants, then we know we can hold on the master. But Judas dissociated himself from the master and pointed more to himself. So, and we have many Judases today, people who seek the attention, who point more and more to themselves. My dear brothers and sisters, it is so important that Jesus gave us an example, turning the tables over and say that we are not men, we are not called to be masters, we are not called to be lords. And if therefore we are not masters, then we have to bend down and wash the feet of others and wash the feet of the people we have been called to serve. I know the impression now in the world, and it's better maybe in the Philippines here, but if you go to other parts, you realize that the priesthood is even considered as, it's a privilege. It's no longer servanthood. It is more of, I have become a priest, therefore I have achieved, I have reached there. And now people are going to serve me throughout my life. No, this is completely different from what Jesus is talking about today. He says, if I am your master and I've washed your feet, then you also must wash the feet of your brothers and sisters. And no master, no servant is greater than his master. And no messenger is greater than the one who sends him. So it's so important that we follow the example of Christ. We be reminded of this, especially for talking about this to young people who are striving, who are aspiring to become priests in the future, that we must always look to this example which Jesus gave to his apostles, that they must bend down. It is not a position of power. It is not a position of being a master and stepping our feet on people and using people as footstools. No. It is a position of bending down to wash the feet of those we are serving, of being at their mercy and being there for them, being ready to die for them as Jesus died for us, giving us an example and saying we must also do the same. We must we must do the same and never forget that we are just messengers. And there is somebody who sent us, and that we are just servants of He who is our Master. Let us therefore continue to pray for the gift of humility in everything that we do, that we may always remember the example that Jesus has given us by becoming humble himself, being humble, living his divinehood, coming to die for us, that we may have life. Let us ask him, therefore, that he may grace us to copy his example and reach out to others in all humility and be servants to each other.